Welcome to the London Book Fair Indie Author Fringe workshop, How to Find and Manage a Great Team of Beta Readers. I'm Belinda Pollard from smallbluedog.com and I'm with you today all the way from Brisbane, Australia. I may be the world's biggest fan of beta readers. I'm not sure, there could be others who are pretty big on them as well, but people are often really surprised that I'm such a fan of beta readers because I'm a book editor. And they say, but doesn't that put you out of business? I don't see it that way. I see it as different components of the process. We're all working together to produce an amazing quality book. In my own indie publishing, I use beta readers as well as professional editors. And with my editing clients, I'm always looking for that point along the way where it's going to really help us to bring some beta readers into the mix. Let's dive in. Beta readers are basically test pilots for our manuscripts. They provide that reader's perspective that we can't get. We're too close, we're too involved. They help us to see the wood for the trees, so to speak. Usually they're amateurs rather than editors. Usually they do it for free. There are some people who do paid beta reads, kind of a manuscript evaluation, but mostly it's done as a voluntary thing. Often it is an exchange with another writer, and usually it's done on a complete manuscript rather than just a segment of a manuscript. But again, not always. Pronunciation is always a problem. I'm Australian and we most commonly tend to say beta. In the States it's often beta. I'd say basically say it however you like. It's the second letter of the Greek alphabet and we're possibly all saying it wrong, but say it however you like and make sure that you get some beta readers. Is there only one right way to use beta readers? Of course there isn't. This is not a set of rules. This is a set of suggestions. This is comments from my experience, things that I have found that have worked really well for me. Take what's useful to you and ignore the rest. What about the purpose for beta readers? They can help you to get your manuscript into the shape where you can get a publisher for it, or if you're an indie, they can actually help you to reduce your editing costs. Because the manuscript that you deliver to your editor is of higher quality, therefore they don't have to spend as many hours editing it as they did. It can also increase your chances of writing a bestseller, an award winner, or a book of enduring significance. For many of us, that's quite important, and these are things that beta readers can really help us with. What's your purpose with writing and your purpose with managing beta readers? It'll be different to everybody else's, and it's good to have your own purpose. So my approach developed over many years, and it was a long and winding road to the way that it happened. I have been in books and publishing since the mid-90s. I used to work as a book editor in Sydney, Australia, and I did a second degree in theology, and that was how I ended up in book publishing, from originally being a journalist and having worked in communication. I worked with a specialist publisher initially on Christian books, and in the late 90s I also began to write meditations for a Christian publisher in the UK, and I've continued to write for them over the years. So I've been traditionally published in that regard. In 2014 I took the big plunge and I decided to become an indie author myself. I published my first novel, which was a mainstream novel for the general market, a mystery thriller called Poison Bay, and the following year I published a light memoir about my crazy dog. This year I've got 3 books coming out. One of them significantly is called Beta Reader Superhero, and I hope you will find it very useful for some of these topics. It will obviously have more detail in it than I'm able to share in just an hour today, but we'll get through as much as we can today just the same. I do writing workshops. I blog at smallbluedog.com. Write and Publish Like a Pro is the name of my blog. And I produce various kinds of workshops for writers. I tend to enter different kinds of awards because I find that meaningful, the feedback that you get through an award and the encouragement that you get. And I've been fortunate to win a few of those. Everybody has a different idea about whether awards are worth it or not. You follow your own path and become the writer that you are longing to be, not me and not the person next to you. My mission is to help people write and publish excellent, influential books. That's what makes me happy. Have you ever heard the story about the little boy who found a butterfly that was coming out of its chrysalis, and it was struggling to get out of that chrysalis, so he helped it. And then the butterfly could not fly because it had not got the strength in its wings from that struggle. Now, I'm not sure that this is scientifically true or not, but it doesn't really matter because it's a fantastic image. To me, the books that we get when we take that time to struggle and to work on them and to wrestle with them when we're not happy with them in those early phases, we end up with so much stronger books, and they are books that, well, they really do fly. The publishing process is different in all publishing houses, but I work on the basis of a publishing process that I learned back when I was working for that publishing house in Sydney, and since then when I've worked for various other publishers, and also when I've been working with indie authors or people who are setting up niche publishing houses. And I have developed an idea from this about the strongest places where we can introduce beta readers into that process. So you start with your concept, then you have your early drafts, your finished first full draft, you rewrite it into the second draft, then you enter the land of endless rewrites, and finally you end up with the final draft, which then if you're submitting to agents and publishers, that's when you brace yourself for lots more work. And if you're going into indie publishing, that's when you move on to formatting and typesetting. Now, there are different types of editors involved at different phases of this process. During that concept development, you might have a developmental editor involved. In terms of using a beta reader instead at that stage, I'd say be really careful because it is a very sensitive stage. I'd only use a beta reader then if they were someone that you really trusted and who was very experienced, or if you are incredibly experienced and confident, so that you can untangle the confusing and often dispiriting feedback that a beta reader might give at that stage. And the same thing with those early partial drafts. I'd say be very careful. I do have a beta buddy that I use at that stage. We bounce ideas off each other, but just be really careful. Beware of getting beta readers involved too early, especially if you are inexperienced. I put it up on the screen in large letters because I have seen problems. I have seen beautiful writers and beautiful books basically crushed because they got the wrong kind of feedback when they were not yet ready for it. They had not yet, the book was not well enough formed, the ideas and concepts were not well enough formed. This is a meme that went round the internet a little while ago and gave me a giggle. Basically, the story idea in your head is the Van Gogh, but when you try and explain it to someone, especially in those early stages, it just comes across like a kid's drawing. And it really is difficult to communicate your concept at those early stages. So just beware. I'm not saying don't use beta readers at that stage. I'm just saying be really careful. The time when I really think it is a great time to bring in the full team of beta readers is at the end of the first complete draft. And I would make this, to me, it's the first edited draft, so the first self-edited draft. I don't just type the end and then send it off. I actually go through it with my own novels, my own books, and I recommend that's a good idea. And the sort of people that you're looking for at this stage are people who are good with the big picture type of stuff. They can see beyond the typos and the plot holes to that beautiful gem that's underneath. If your beta readers are very inexperienced, it can be better, and also you are inexperienced, it can sometimes be better to wait until your more polished second draft, after you've done the really first big edit or rewrite. So you've finished the second draft and you have done the big rewrite. It's time to pull in all the team. Try to get people with different skill sets who can give you different perspectives on your book. I would usually have at least 2 or 3 at this phase on a non-fiction manuscript, and 6 or more on fiction and creative non-fiction like memoir, because those genres are so much more subjective. You'll get a much more nuanced feedback. The more people that you have, if you've only got 1 or 2, you can be swayed in a direction that's not necessarily the best direction for your book. Whereas if you've got multiple readers and they have different, they might have completely conflicting opinions, but the more of them that you have, the more you are able to weigh up those conflicts and see what the path is for you through that. At the final draft stage, it can sometimes be handy to get a final pass from a trusted beta reader to see if you have handled all of those changes well, or whether you might have introduced any new problems into the manuscript. Again, I wouldn't generally recommend replacing a professional copy editor with beta readers, but if you are self-publishing on a tiny budget, look for someone who's got an excellent eye for detail, great English skills, they read widely, and they're wise about books and publishing. Ask them to read every single letter and punctuation mark, and to use track changes in Word so that you can easily see what they've changed. There's quite a lot in this whole flow of the publishing process, and I will explain that in more detail in my book, but we'll have to keep moving for now. Characteristics of the ideal beta reader. Now, please note that this is the ideal beta reader. This is not, there is not a person in creation who has all of these characteristics. But these are some things to look for and to think about. In terms of their personal characteristics, look for someone who matches the target demographic of your book. And they might not completely match it, but and it might not be that all of your beta readers are in the target demographic. This can be, maybe you might write chick lit for women of a certain age. Make sure that at least some of your beta readers are in that particular age. If you write children's books, make sure that you have some children do some beta reading for you. Children, and beware, because children can be quite brutal, but they also, their feedback can be incredibly useful as well. If you're getting someone who is not in the target demographic, try and find someone who can put themselves in someone else's shoes, someone who has that empathy and that ability to think what it might be like to be this other person. Look for people who do have strong opinions, but are not cruel in the way that they express them to you. It really can break your heart if you get a cruel beta read. It's also good to look for someone who's not too kind. If they're too kind, they won't tell you what you need to know. They're probably not your mother or your life partner, but sometimes they can be. So that's not a blanket ban or anything. Again, this is not rules. This is ideas. There's someone trustworthy. I really recommend taking the time to get to know your beta readers. Really interact with them. Find out what they love and what they hate, and what their ethics and morals are. All kinds of things. Take the time to get to know these people. In terms of their reading and writing characteristics, ideally they're people who read a lot and from lots of different genres. So you will get a lot of strength in their feedback if there's someone who reads biographies and memoirs and trashy fiction and literary fiction and non-fiction, they're able to draw on all those different threads to give you your feedback. So that can be actually really powerful. And I put there, unless your target audience is people who don't read. Now, people would say, why would you be writing a book for people who don't read? Well, one of my clients did. He was writing encouragement books for men who were not big readers. And so we had to work on the way that this particular book was put together so that it would be meaningful for people who don't read for pleasure. So we tested it with some people in that target readership. Look for people who read your genre. So fantasy is not the same as mystery thriller, is not the same as horror, is not the same as comedy. All of these different genres have their own expectations. There's reader expectations. There's various shorthand, shortcut things that you use to communicate in each genre. And so it's a really good idea to have people who actually do read and love that particular genre. Often the best beta readers are writers themselves, but not always. You might find that you have some fantastic beta readers who are readers, not writers, and they can still give you excellent feedback. Ideally, it's someone who has never read your manuscript before. Now, that's obviously not going to work if they're part of your writers group. Maybe you have read parts of your manuscript aloud there. Weigh this up for your own situation, but I think it's important to have at least a few readers who have never seen this thing before and can react to it fresh as someone who is seeing it for the first time, as your readers will be when it's published, because it'll give you a better idea of what's working, what's not, what's understandable and what isn't. It's good to have beta readers with some publishing smarts. They understand what it is that makes a good book compared to a pretty average book. They can understand the difference between correct and proper writing as opposed to authorial voice. This is one that a lot of people have a problem with, especially if they're really good at what I'll call proper grammar. They have a problem with the fact that you might have fragments of sentences and all these kinds of things going on in your book. Now, it's important to have at least some people who will understand the difference between correct and a living book. You need some who understand what is and is not important in a first draft. So, for example, I've beta read for someone whose first draft was full of typos and things, but I know that the books that she produces are impeccable. So I know that she will pick up on those typos. So I don't even pay any attention to them. I'm looking for the story when I beta read for her. And you need people who can see past some of that clutter in the front. Some people will see one comma out of place on a whole page and think the book is rubbish because of that, because they don't know enough about what goes into producing a book. That's one of the places where having some fellow writers among your beta readers can be quite handy, because they know how many phases a book goes through before it's actually publishable. If it's a specialist book, see if you can get at least one or two beta readers who actually know that field. Or if it's a book, it might be on a specialist topic, like some specialist non-fiction topic, but it is for the general reader. So you might want a specialist who can check that you've got your facts right, and then a general reader who can tell you if you've communicated effectively and if they've understood and they know how to act upon the information that you've given them. If you've used an exotic location, somewhere that you don't live, it can be a good idea to see if you can find someone who does know it, who does live there, who can check that you've got the buildings in the right place, that even some of the things like local dialect and stuff, that you've got some of this stuff correct. It can be good to find someone like that. It can also be good to have someone who has really good publishing instincts. They know the kinds of things that get published. They know what people buy and what they read. I did a survey of my email list a couple of months ago about questions that people have about beta readers and the trouble that people have with beta readers. And my goodness me, I got 50 responses within 2 hours. I have never seen such a response to a survey. So this is obviously a hot button issue. So if you are having some trouble with your beta readers, you are not alone. And there's nothing wrong with you. You're quite normal. These are some of the things people told me. They don't know where to find them. They can't find people they trust. The responses come back too slowly. People are too nice or they're too mean. The feedback is just not any use. They don't know how to brief the people. Of course, the big one, they all say different things. And what do you do with these completely conflicting reports? As we resolve some of those, now I'll be answering a lot of those questions in the book, but I want to try and get us to at least some understanding of some of them in this presentation. So let me just talk you through a bit of my story regarding how I have used beta readers for my own books, and see if it just gives you, if it triggers some ideas in your head for ways that you could find beta readers, get to know beta readers, and manage that whole process. My very first beta reader came from a contest that I entered. I entered a bunch of contests and didn't win them, but then I finally did, and the one that I did win had a manuscript consultant as part of the prize, and that was fabulous. So, and she was a professional as well, so obviously that was really valuable. But have a look around, enter some contests, some writing contests that have that sort of feedback as part of the prize. Have a look, Google for writing contest and then your location, because often these things are specific to certain parts of the world. And you might find some usefulness there in entering some of those. My next beta reader was a woman that I had connected with on Twitter, and we'd been to one another's blogs, we'd conversed, we'd left comments, and she said, I'm going to be looking for beta readers, and I know you need one too. Would you like me to do a beta read of your book, and we can beta read for each other? Now, this was the first that I'd really come across this, and I was excited but nervous to do it. But I did do it, and she did a fabulous job of beta reading my book and gave me the most incredible insights to how to fix it. The third one was a friend of mine that I've known for many years, and she's not writing books, but she does actually write for a living. She writes marketing material, and she's highly literate, and she's a thoughtful person, and she'd been asking me so many questions about Poison Bay. This was back when I was writing the first novel. And I was a bit nervous to ask her, but I thought, well, why don't we give it a shot? And so I asked her if she would be willing to beta read for me. And she was delighted to be asked. She did a fabulous job. And what's more, she has continued to be quite a partner with me in my whole publishing thing. She's an encourager. Who just continues to be involved in my publishing. Another one came in as an offer of help. I tweeted something on Twitter about where I was up to with my rewrite and just used the am writing hashtag. And this friend, we'd talked to each other on Twitter before. We'd been to one another's blogs. Are you seeing a pattern here? Social media is a powerful force when you use it correctly. Those are real people behind those tweets, behind every tweet, and all those Facebook posts and all the rest of it, is a beating human heart. So don't forget that. People will often say, oh, it's just, you need to get to the real world. Well, no, these are real people too. Anyway, I tweeted what the trouble I was having, and she sent me a message saying, can I help? And I really wanted to ask her to beta read, but I was nervous to do so. I finally hesitantly reached out and said, would you be willing to do it? Because I knew it was a lot of work. And we didn't know each other hugely well at that stage. But she said yes. She did fabulous beta read. We've become firm friends, and we are beta buddies still today. We give each other that. I can send her a cover design and say, what do you think? And she'll come straight back and say, yay, I love it, or oh no, get rid of this. And we help each other in all kinds of ways. And she lives in a different part of the world to me. Another one came from one of my clients. I'd mentioned to her in our interactions that I was having trouble with the opening chapter of my novel. And she said, send it to me and I'll just give you my feedback. I was nervous to do that because, frankly, when you're a professional and an editor, you really don't want your clients seeing the kind of rubbish that you write. But this particular person, she actually said to me, it won't affect my opinion of your editing. So I sent it to her. She did an amazing job, and it was really useful. I had a character in Poison Bay who has type 1 diabetes. Now, Poison Bay is about a bunch of old school friends who go out hiking in the New Zealand wilderness and basically start killing one another, as old friends so often do. And it's it's a wilderness survival thing and a bit of a murder mystery. And I did a lot of research on the type 1 diabetes, but no one's really written a textbook on what to do if you've got type 1 diabetes and you're stuck in the wilderness with a crazed murderer. So I was looking for someone who could help me with that. Now, I had sort of just really just brushed past on social media another writer who I knew was a bit of a type 1 diabetes advocate. She's got a daughter and a husband who both have the disease. And I thought, well, I don't know. I really don't know her very well. But because she's an advocate, maybe she would like to make sure that there's not another book out there with rubbish in it about diabetes. And she said yes. She did an amazing job on the feedback that she gave me. It was a bit hard to hear some of it because I had made some big mistakes, but I was so grateful for having those picked up. Another specialist that I found, there's police involvement in my story. It's set in New Zealand, and I wanted to check whether what I'd done was feasible. I knew it wouldn't be factual because I was playing with the truth a bit, but I wanted it to be, I didn't want it to be stretching credibility too far, and I wanted it to be accurate in terms of certain things to do with the way the New Zealand police operate. For instance, they don't carry guns, so that's something that you need to know, and I wanted to know what kind of guns do they carry. Now, I had done a research trip for this novel. I went to New Zealand and I hiked the Milford Track, which is a 4-day trek through mountains. It's totally remote. And then I spent 10 days after that in the tiny little town of Te Anau, which probably no tourist before or since has ever spent 10 days staying in. It's a lovely town, but it's, most people stay a night and move on. But I stayed there and I interviewed people. I spoke to the police. I spoke to the search and rescue people. I did a whole lot of stuff and did research in the library with local books that were available there. But there were other questions that came up. As I went on and finished writing the novel, there were things that I wasn't sure about regarding the way the police would operate. So I did a check online. I thought, you never know, maybe there will be such a thing as a New Zealand police manuscript consultant, because you never know. I think there are some in the United States. Anyway, I didn't find that sort of person, but what I did find was a retired police inspector who had self-published a book about boats. And I thought, well, you never know if you don't ask. So I sent him an email via his website and asked him if he would consider it, providing me this feedback. I offered to pay him. He ended up doing the feedback for me. I just sent him the segments that actually had police action in them, and he checked all of those. And he gave me the most amazing feedback, like not only telling me what I'd got wrong, but also giving me suggestions for how to fix it, and also which parts I could get away with as being literary license, where you just push it a little bit, but not too far. So that was really amazing. Another one was someone who was writing a memoir, and I've edited quite a few memoirs, so I offered to beta read for her. She offered to do one in return on my novel, but I didn't need one by then. But I said, but in a year's time I'm writing a memoir about my dog. Would you like to look at that? And she did a fabulous job. I also had a friend who was wanting to write but hadn't really gotten off the ground yet. And I asked her if she would be willing to beta read the book for me. She didn't want to read the novel because she doesn't read mysteries. She finds they keep her awake at night. But she said, I'll do your dog book for you though. And she did a wonderful job. Another one was a mystery writer who I had connected with on Twitter and blogs again. And I knew that she was working on her next manuscript, and I said, would you like a beta read? Again, she took that offer up, and then she beta read for me on my dog memoir the following year, and she did an amazing job. So that was fantastic. And of course, the last one was my mother. And I've said, don't ask your mother, but sometimes your mother's the right person, and it depends very much on the mother. My mother is really good at brevity. She's highly intelligent, but she barely bothers with complete sentences when she's writing me emails and things. So I asked her to go through, I gave her a printout of my manuscript and a red pen, and I said, can you go through and put a line through anything that does not need to be on that page? Because I was over my word count. I was up to about 110,000 words, and I needed to get it down to 90,000. And she really helped me with that process. Initially, she was a bit nervous. She didn't want to hurt my feelings. But I said, I'd rather hear it from you than from 100 bad reviews. And then she got stuck into it, and she really enjoyed it. Condensing my experience into some principles that you can apply and use for your own beta readers, I'd say one of the most important ones is to think ahead. Be thinking now about the beta readers that you want this time next year, rather than getting to the end of your first draft and saying, oh, I need beta readers, where can I find some? Get to know and like people. Meet other writers, both at writing groups and writing workshops. Take the time, if you do go to a workshop or a seminar, take the time to actually chat with the people around you. Instead of sitting in a cone of silence, get to know people. Get to know people on Twitter's a fantastic place to meet other writers. I've found it a powerhouse for that. And make genuine two-way connections. Don't just think, oh, that person would make a good beta reader, I'd better get to know them, because they will be able to tell. People know when you're using them. So get to know, connect with the people that you really genuinely like. Make it as easy as possible for them, both to give you feedback and to say no to giving you feedback. And there are ways to do that. There are ways to ask. I've found that some people think that they're doing people the most enormous favour by letting them read their book before anyone else gets to read it. Well, when you think about it, someone's got to spend hours reading your book, and then they, depending on how they approach it, They might then spend hours actually thinking it through and preparing some feedback for you, trying to be tactful in the way that they write it and also useful and helpful. It could be quite a few hours of work that they're going to do for you. And so it really is a big favour. So make it as easy as possible. Look for people who are strong in the things that you know that you're not so strong in. Like me with my asking my mother to cut down my word count, you might look for someone who's, perhaps you're not good at detail. One of your beta readers might be someone who's really good at detail, has a great eye for all those little mistakes and errors, so that they can perhaps point out to you errors that you're consistently making. If you've got a friend who really and genuinely is interested in your book, who asks lots of questions, take note. That could be someone who would make a really good beta reader, even though they're not necessarily the first person that you would have thought of. And also look for ways to pay it forward. Can you offer someone a beta read, even though they can't return the favour for you at the moment? Can you help them? And then maybe they can help someone else in the future. In terms of attitudes, we really do need to honour our beta readers. They do an amazing job, and it's hard work and it's unpaid. I always put an acknowledgement of my beta readers in the acknowledgement section in the front of my books. And I also list, so my beta readers are predominantly authors, so I will actually give their book a little plug there when I thank them. Try to be helpful in terms of the formats that you give your beta readers. So do they want a Word document? Do they want a PDF? Would they rather have a Mobi file that they can read on their Kindle, or an EPUB for various other e-readers? Ask them, what format do they want? With scheduling, work around their needs. Try and give them as clean a manuscript as possible, because it's a more pleasant job for them, and it's also, you'll get better feedback because they're not so distracted by all the funny little silly typos and things, because you've fixed those already. Be sensitive to them, because there's a good chance that they will be nervous too. I've been editing books for decades, but I'm still actually quite nervous when I do a beta read for someone for the first time, because I'm not quite sure how they're going to react to what I've got to say. Set the tone in your briefing too. How deep do you want them to go? How critical do you want them to be? What can you bear? With scheduling, set a date that you would like it back from them. Like, tell them a date, because it just makes it so much easier for people to lock it into their minds. But please base the date on reality rather than just your impatience. Now, some people will be, people fall off their chairs when I say give them 3 to 6 weeks if you can. But seriously, it's a big job and people are really busy. If you can give them that long, please do. If there's a special reason that you need it faster than that, then tell them what it is and get them on board. Maybe you've got a publishing deadline, or you're putting it in a contest. Tell them what the reason is that you need it faster. Also, if you do need it fast, I recommend recruiting extra readers. I did this on Dogged Optimism because I was trying to get it out for Christmas, and I needed my beta readers to turn it around in only 1 week, which is really tight because they're very busy people. So I recruited 6, and when the schedule slipped, because it did, I kept them updated. I actually set up a group email to send to them, and I apologised for sending them group emails rather than individual ones, but it just meant that I could quickly send an update and say, we've moved back, we've lost a week. If this means you can no longer do it now, then that is fine, but I'm just keeping you up to date. And amazingly, all of them actually did the beta read, and they got it back to me within the week. They were just superstars. In terms of specific questions to ask them, do you want big picture feedback, or do you want fine detail? Do you want them to be looking at some of those smaller issues? And please ask them to tell you what they liked about it. That is so important. So many times people get a beta report back and it is just so negative that they want to give up and walk away. Ask them for the positives as well, because A, it will help you not to get rid of the things that are actually really good about your manuscript accidentally, and B, it will give you the courage to go on, because when you're processing all the negatives, you can keep going back and reading that paragraph or whatever of the things that they liked. Ask them what they liked and why they liked it. If you're writing fiction or creative non-fiction, you might want to know if your characters are convincing and consistent, if your dialogue is realistic. With grammar, it's a good idea to look for anything that is consistently wrong. Say you spell of with two Fs, or you've got the wrong two, whether it's TO or TOO. If you've got the wrong one all the time, they can point that out to you. Ask them if there's anything irritating or anything they hated about the book. If it's non-fiction, do your explanations make sense? If it's a how-to, can they do the how-to? Can they follow the instructions? Are there parts of it that are too long or too short or too boring? And it's a good idea to throw in an anything else question. Is there anything else that you'd like to say? I have got some absolute gems in the anything else section, things that I didn't think to ask. And ask them for ideas on how to fix the problems. But do beware of that, because maybe their solution is not one that suits you. And ask for a testimonial. This is absolute gold in your marketing. If you've got, especially if your beta readers are published writers, you can list them there as your kind of puff quotes, the things that you use in your blurb and to promote your book. So ask them to, if they liked the book, would they consider writing a short testimonial telling potential readers what it was that was good about this book. I've got a sample briefing document, which is the one that I actually used for Dogged Optimism. And it's available for you to download as an example, not so that you can just slavishly copy it or anything, but so that you can use it to get some ideas for how you might like to put together a briefing document. And you can get that at this link, smallbluedog.com/beta readers. So you can pop over and grab that if you can jot that down, you can pop over and grab that when we've finished. Oh, the big question. How do we respond to what they tell us? All these different opinions that come in. This is a tweet that I saw last year. Squints at notes. One beta has said, too much exposition. Another has said, please expand upon this point. And isn't that the story of our beta reports? Totally opposite feedback. So what do we do about it? The truth is that every reader reads a different book. They read the book that is in their head, not the one that's in your head. There is a way to unpack that completely different feedback that you've received, to make sense of it, and to create something that is even more powerful because of all those conflicting opinions. But I would give this warning. The less experienced you are as an author, the more important it is not to rush your reaction to beta feedback. That's so important that I'm putting it up there as a quote. Don't rush into it. The reason that it's a problem is I've seen this happen before. I've seen people, they get the first report in and they race off and they do everything that that beta reader has told them to do. Second report comes in, it's completely different, quite the opposite on some of the things. Then they don't know what to do. By the end of it, after you've gone back and forth 57 times, the book is no longer your book, it's this kind of Frankenbook. It's much better to wait and think. Read it all the feedback from all the beta readers. Give yourself space and time, breathe. Eat chocolate, cry, whatever you need to do. Then let it all settle for a while, and then read it again. If a piece of advice does not feel right to you, it's really important to listen to your instinct. I'm not saying to just ignore advice. We should consider all of it really carefully and weigh it up. What I'm saying is don't ignore your instinct about your own book. Humility is good, but loss of your story is really bad, and I have seen it happen. Please be careful. Remember we talked about the Van Goghs? Well, maybe you're writing Starry Night and the other person is thinking about sunflowers. How do we assess it? I've got 3 methods here. Now, obviously, and they are not the only 3 ways that you could assess a manuscript, but there's some that you can try. The spreadsheet is good for the analytical types. You can break down the reactions by categories. You might perhaps focus on just a particular part of the book that you especially struggled with, or a particular aspect of the book, not just necessarily a part of the manuscript, but maybe a whole plot line that you were struggling with. You might spreadsheet all the different reactions on that particular thing. Look for both agreement and contradiction, and compare it against the personalities and experience of each beta reader. How is their personality and their experience in the publishing world informing the reactions that they've given you, and what can you learn from that? So this could be an idea for a spreadsheet where you've got the names of your beta readers across the top, and then all the particular topics that they're covering down the left-hand side, and you type into it and the cells grow as you type more material into that. Just do it in Word or Excel. Colour and movement. Print out all the reports, then get yourself a nice set of highlighters in lots of different colours, and choose one colour for each thing. So, for example, blue for character issues, yellow for setting, pink for dialogue, orange for theme. Make yourself a little key, because you won't remember which colour's which. Make a key and then work through all the reports and highlight the things that relate to that particular topic. Then create a list or a mind map of all the connections that's created for you. If you've got a whiteboard, this can be particularly good. It might sound a bit nuts, but the actual big elbow movements and things that you do using a whiteboard is particularly good for the kinesthetic learners, people who learn through movement, and also the visual people. So give that a shot. The third one is instinct. This one's a little bit more subtle. You read it all, you let it settle, you read it again, then you actually put it aside and you make your own list or mind map, whichever works better for you, of what stays with you from that experience of reading all of those. What's still in your mind at the end after you've put it aside? This one's a good one for the intuitive people. Give them all a try. You might use one on one project and one on another project. You might use one for fiction, one for non-fiction. You might use a bit of them all. Just see what works for you and give it a go. And look for advice that you can repurpose. For example, "you must never use an adverb" is inexperienced advice. Adverbs are a part of speech and they have a role to play. But it raises the question, are you using too many adverbs, and could there be a stronger way for you to write those particular sections? The example there is my German backpackers. This was in Poison Bay, my novel, where I had these 2 German backpackers and I really quite loved them. They played a lovely role in the manuscript for me. But I got the feedback from my beta reader that really they hadn't really earned their place in the finished book. I was delighted with them, but they really didn't contribute to the plot that much, and they never appeared again. They appeared once early in the piece and then never appeared again. And she also was concerned that one of my bad guys, my kind of second order bad guy, she wasn't convinced by his motivation. She wasn't convinced that he would have done the things that he did. And she suggested, why don't you get rid of him, or turn him into a good guy, and use the German backpackers as your second order bad guy. Now, this was an intriguing suggestion, but in the end it didn't sit right with me. It was that Starry Night versus Sunflowers thing. It just wasn't quite right. But what I did do was, I got rid of the German backpackers, even though I loved them, because they appeared once and never again. And secondly, I really worked hard on the motivation for that bad guy. I realised that he was not convincing, and I worked really, really hard. And I'm so glad for the feedback that she gave me, because the book is so much stronger because of having those additions. Just a reminder again that to get that sample briefing document, to give you some inspiration for how to write a briefing document for your beta readers, go to smallbluedog.com/beta readers. And I wish you the best of everything with your books and your publishing, and especially with managing your beta reader process. I've really enjoyed being with you today, and I hope to hear more about what's happening in your writing and publishing. I'm Belinda Pollard from smallbluedog.com. Bye.